Hello friends, the second video is the continuation of the first video. So here we will start officially our first lab. The title or the objective of the lab is Introduction to Python, PyCharm and Jupyter Notebook. So Jupyter Notebook and PyCharm I already discussed with you earlier. So we'll directly dive into Python programming language. So there are a few things which you should know about Python. That Python is basically a high-level programming language and it is used in multiple scope. So the Python has its roots in data sciences, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and above all robotics. So the reason why Python is very diverse is just because of its syntax. So if you are not from engineering background or computer science background and you are worried about the syntax, that whether the syntax or the writing pattern of Python is difficult, it's not basically. It's very easy and you just have to focus on the basic syntax and gradually you will learn it. Above all, Python is a user-friendly programming language, and following are the most repetitive uses of Python. So it can be used on server to create web applications, which is Django. Then we have alongside software to create workflows. This is also possible. It can connect to database systems, specifically, a lot of data systems, even with the Google framework as well. It can also read and modify files as well. Python can be used to handle big data and perform complex mathematics as well. And above all, of course, it's used for rapid prototyping or for production-ready software development. So these days, Python is basically collaborating with different programming languages so that people can do rapid programming. So first they do programming on Python, and the Python is integrated with different operating systems, different programming languages. Like I can mention one example is ROS. So if you want to work on robot operating system, so you can directly use Python in ROS as well. So which means you actually know Python, but you are actually working on ROS. So that's this basically the advantage of learning Python. Then as we move forward, there are few commands which you should know by heart in Python. The first is hashtag. So hashtag is used for commenting purpose. So if you want to write a comment or a message that is not part of your code, but just a formal message, so you can write hashtag. Like there is an example in front of you. This is a comment. So with hashtag, you have to write the statement. So we can write it over here as well. So how to use it? This was a beginner course. You have to press new. You have to make a Python 3 file. And the very first thing after creating a file is you have to rename it. So you can write it lab1. And then you can write, this is my first class, or you can say first lab, or anything that suits you best. If you will run this code, there are two ways to run this code. First is you can press Shift and Enter together, or you can press the Run button. So this is how it will run the code. So don't focus on what is written I and 1. 1 is basically iteration, that how many times you have actually, run the Jupyter notebook. So if you will run it again, Shift Enter, so it will become 2. So it's just a number, it's nothing else. And moving forward, other than comments, there is one thing which is very important, that is variables and strings. So in Python, there are basic three types of variables. One is integer, one is float, and one is character or strings. Character or string, I will define it later, but let's start with numbers. So there are two kinds of number in programming. One is decimal number and one is without decimal number, which is an integer number. So any number that exists from minus infinity to plus infinity is basically a integer number. But what if I add a decimal into that number? So it becomes a floating number. So floating numbers are referred as decimal numbers. So if I ask you, if I give you a number 5, so you will say 5 is an integer number. But what if I give you 5.5? So you will say 5.5 is a decimal or a floating number. Same goes with words. So words in special characters like at the rate, exclamation mark, dot, full stop, and everything. So the difference between character and word in different programming languages is very difficult. Example, in C, they are treated entirely differently, but in Python, they are same. So strings is basically an alternative name for words. So Words is basically combination of letters, whereas if you have alone a letter alone, that is a character then or a alphabet. So you can use character or a word or a alphabet or a string in Python using double inverted commas or single inverted commas. So whenever you want to define a number or a word, sorry, specifically, so you have to write it in double inverted comma. And the last thing is variable. So variable is like a container in which you have to store your values. So it's like a container in which you are pouring or you are putting some values inside it. So let's take an example. There is one X and one Y. X has 5 and Y has John. So we can also implement the same example over here. We'll go to our lab one. We will write X or any other variable. You can write any letter as a variable, or you can even write a word as a name of a variable. But you have to just keep one thing in mind. Variable should not start with a number. It can end with a number. It cannot start with a number. Moreover, in variables, no spaces are allowed. Now let's take an example. I can write x123 is equals to 56. Okay, so this is possible, but I cannot write 123x is equals to 56. It will give me an error. It's a syntax error. But I can write this x underscore 123. This is also a variable. So that's how you define a variable. It all depends on your application. So I will write x, very simple, x is equals to 56, and then y is equals to any name, like my name, Kamran. Okay, now you can understand two things. One is 56 and one is Kamran. If I need to print user the output of my stored value or the input which I have taken from the environment, so how to show the output? The syntax is very easy. See, you have to write print, and inside the print you have to mention the variable name. So in our case, the name of the variable is x, and in the next line I will write print y. So see what will happen. There are two ways, shift enter or press enter. So see, on the first line, 56 was printed, and on the second line, Kamran was printed. If you wanted both to be in the single line, you can write x comma y, and you can remove the second as well. And once you will press run, so you will see 56 and Kamran. So that's how you basically display a message or display anything that is being stored in your variable. Apart from it, you can even save a character. It's completely fine. Now let's take an example. I will save a C letter. Okay, and I will write Z. So see, 56 Kamran and then C. So C is basically a letter. So there is no difference between a letter and a string or a character and a word in Python specifically. If you talk about C, so they are treated differently. One is strings and one is character. So that's the beauty of Python. Now there is one more example which is written over here. Variables are overwritten sometimes. So overwritten, which means they are in easier word, it's like they are mutable. Okay, mutable means which means they can overwrite, which means they can change their value inside it. So in the second cell, x was 56, but what if I write x is equals to 99? X is equals to 99. So if I want to print x, so I was expecting that the answer should be 56, but let's see what's the answer. The answer is 99. Why? Because Python basically runs in a sequential order, and the last thing which is in the Python is iterated. It actually shows that thing. So the last thing was x is equals to 99. So it printed me that x, the value of x is 99. But if I run this code over here, so it will be 56. Why? Because I haven't run this code from down, but it's the above code. So it basically runs in a sequential order. So you have to make sure if you are using multiple variables or if you are doing a lot of calculations in your programming, so you have to distinguish between variables. So if my first variable name is x, you should not repeat x in any part of your code. You can write it x1 or x underscore 1 or anything that suits you best. So this is basically variables are overwritten. Same goes with y as well. You can override y as well, and you can override z as well. Moving forward, the very important thing is type. So type is a very important function which is used whenever you are receiving some data. So let's take an example. You gave me a data is equals to, let's take an example, robotics. Okay. Now I don't know that robotics is a word, is a string, like it's a string or an integer or a floating number. I don't know it because it's a data that is coming from a black box. Okay. Now I want to justify and I want to identify that what is basically the type of the data. So what do you write? You write inside the print, you can write it because print always displays you the message. Print type, and inside parentheses of type, you have to write the variable name data. So see the magic. Now this is saying me string. What does string means? Because inside data, there is a data, but the type of data is strings. If I remove it from robotics to 23, now see the difference. Now it's giving me integer, which means it's actually justifying me the data that is coming from data variable is basically a integer data. And what if I write 23.5? So see, it's a float. So classes basically defines you that what data type you are using or what data type you are getting it. This is very helpful for those who are basically retrieving or sending information when they are working on web applications. Moving forward, then we have something very important and very logical in Python, that is Boolean variable. So Boolean is very simple. It's based on a logic. So if the condition is true, the Boolean state gives you a 1, which is a high value. If the condition is not true, the Boolean variable will give you 0, which is a low value. So it's very simple. So you can write anything inside that variable. So let's assume I'm writing B is equals to 85, and then C is equals to 95, and I'm writing print B is greater than A. So I can see that B is not greater than A, B is not greater than C, because C is greater than B. I can see it. So I can expect that the answer would be false. So see, the answer is false because the condition is not being justified. So if I just change the sign from greater than to less than, then it will show me the same sign. So see, it displaying me true, which means B is less than C. So you realize that Python is very easy. You just have to know the basic mathematics, and that's all, and you can write any code in Python. And now where basically these logical operators are used, basically these are used in conditional statement, which would be our next topic. So we would be using it a lot. Moving forward, then we have simple basic arithmetic operations. So it's an obvious thing that if you want to add two numbers, you will write plus in between. If you want to subtract two numbers, you have to write minus. You have to multiply, you can write asterisk. If you want to divide, so you can write the slash sign, division sign. And above all is a remainder, because remainder is different from division. So those who are not aware about the difference between division and remainder, please search it on Google as well. Remainder gives you the returns you the remainder value, whereas division gives you the answer. So if 10 is divided by 5, so 5 twos are 10. So your answer will be 2. But what if 10 remainder 5? So it will give you the value 1, which means 0, because it's divisible by the number. Then we have greater than, less than sign. We can use all of these signs in our programming as well. Then we have greater than and equals to, less than and equals to. Now there is one more interesting thing over here is comparison. So there are two types of comparisons that are mostly done in Python language. One is double equals to, and one is exclamation and equals to. So the difference between single equals to and double equals to is double equals to is used for comparison, whereas single equals to is used to assign a value from right hand side to left hand side. So it's very simple, like you can write it over here as well. So if I'm writing A is equals to 5, which means 5 is now inside A. But in the next line, I'm writing A is equals to 5, equals to 5, which means I'm asking that whether A is really equals to 5 or not. So this is the difference. Whereas if you don't want to compare two numbers and you want to make sure that these two numbers should not be equals to, so instead of 1 equals to, you use exclamation mark. So that means that doesn't equals to the other variable or the other number. Then we have comparison not equals to, and then so on. Now see, as I mentioned earlier, after every lab, there are some basic tasks which you have to cover, and those are very basics. Specifically for those who are new to Python, it's very easy for you and very enjoying for you. So there are three tasks. The first is write a Python program to test all of the above Python programming fundamentals. So you have the document with you. You can write all the above code in your Jupyter notebook, and you can run it 10 by 10, and you can see whether I was telling it right or wrong. Because if I'm saying 10 is greater than 9 gives you a true answer. So you can double check it. The second is you have to write a Python code to make a simple calculator which can perform below operations, which is addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. This we will do. I can give you a clue, but you have to do it on your own. The third is write a Python program to print a message hello world. That's very easy. You just have to write print and then you have to write hello world. For the second code, I just wanted to share one thing which is very helpful. You can practice your code. If you want us, if you want our help, you can email us or you can directly write in the comment section. So we can, answer your queries as well. Here I would like to tell you one more thing. Now, see, there's a difference between A is equals to 5, which means you are assigning 5 into A. Now, assume if I want a random value to be get assigned in A, which means I'm asking user an input. So if you want a input from a user, that is basically not static programming, that is dynamic programming. So there are two types of programming, one is static and one is dynamic. In static programming, variables are defined, values are defined that are not changing. But in dynamic, with times, things get changed. So instead of A equals to 5, I will write int, then I will write input, and then I will write the message. Now let's take an example, enter any number. Okay. Now if I copy this code, and if I paste it down, and instead of A, if I write B, and instead of number 1, I can here write number 2. To make it more beautiful, I can use the colon as well. So I'm asking user two number. Input is used to ask any data from the user or from the Jupyter notebook. Integer means the data should be in form of integer. So what if the data should be in form of float? What would be the answer? The answer would be you just have to change integer with float. That's the answer. And if I ask you the data is neither integer nor float, then there is third thing, that is string. So you have two options. Either you can write str over here, which defines string, or you cannot write anything, which means anything means nothing if you will not write anything over here. So by default, it consider it as a string or a word variable. So that's also possible. We will try all of three examples right now. So we'll start with integer first. So we have two numbers, and then we have C is equals to A plus B, and I'm writing print. The answer for addition is, you can write C over here. Now see the magic. It's asking me number 1. I will write a random number, that is 25. Then I will write 21. So see, it gives me the answer 46. That is specifically for those who are using integer as an input. Now, what if I use float? So float, then on the second, I will change it with float as well, because I really want both numbers to be float. Then I will run this code. I will write 20.1 plus 20.4. So see, it gives me an output of 40.5. What if I want to use a character or a string? So you have two possibilities. Either you write str, or either you can write nothing. So I will do one with string and one with nothing. So you have to change the message because that doesn't make sense. So you can write enter first name, okay, and enter second name. So you can write like this, enter first name. So I can write robotic, second name guy. So see, the answer for addition is robotic gap. So what is actually happening? It's basically adding two words together. This is known as concatenation in Python programming. So you can add two words, you can add two letters, but you cannot subtract it. That's an obvious thing. You cannot multiply them, but you can multiply a string with a number as well. Let's take an example. I want to print Kamran 5 times, so you can do it. We will do it in, I guess, in the third or the fourth video where we will start for loops. So that's up till now. So you can practice these three questions and gradually you will understand what is basically the basics or the fundamental of Python programming.